Welcome, Charlotte Griffin here from Berlin Pat Nebling, and we're proud to be sponsoring today's investing session with Andy Tolbert. Andy Tolbert's a realtor and instructor and is a member of the Florida Realtors faculty. She's been investing since 1998 and had done everything from flips to rentals and Airbnbs. For many years, she was a loan officer. She owned a mortgage company and a brokerage specializing in property management and investing. She also ran the Orlando Real Estate Investing Association for about 13 years. Please welcome Andy Tolbert.
Good morning, everybody. How are you doing out there? This is a webinar, so it is a kind of a one-way. We have a lot of information to bring to you, but we're also going to have some Q&A time at the end. So in your little chat box, hopefully everybody knows how to use the chat box. In the chat box, if you've got any questions that pop up that I don't cover, we've got a few minutes set aside at the end to go over that. So let's see here. Let me change my view here of what I am seeing. And let me go ahead and pull up my share screen. Everybody have a cup of coffee? Y'all ready to go for today? I hope. Now, that's not nice. Yep. Cassidy reminded we're going to do questions at the end, so don't forget that. Now, for whatever reason, my PowerPoint is not showing up where I get to share it with you. So give me just 1 second while I pull that up. I don't know why, because I see it. I don't know why you can't. So we are going to talk about investing today. And investing is a topic that everybody's kind of interested and excited about, but a lot of times not everybody understands some of the different ramifications. So think about just for a second, if you've worked with a customer before who wanted to buy an investment property. One of the things I see is sometimes as agents, we are being asked to guide other people in areas that we may not necessarily be the experts in, if that makes sense to you. We have a duty to our customers to not steer them down the wrong path. And for whatever reason, a lot of agents take on customers that maybe they really shouldn't. Does that make sense? Like, listen, I don't know anything. I know a little bit about commercial just from my own research, but I would never take on a commercial customer who wants that type of representation, because it is not that's not my world. It's not my specialty. It's not my forte. And I would actually be doing that customer a disservice by trying to represent them in a transaction like that. Does that make sense? Could I maybe limp through it? Maybe. However, it's probably not my best decision. I'm trying to see. I'm not quite sure if you guys are seeing this or not. If somebody can throw in the chat, are you guys seeing my screen now that has the little alarm clock on it?
Hey Andy, this is Jesse. We see you, but not a screen share.
It's when I click the screen share, it's not giving me the option of my PowerPoint. I had 2 PowerPoints open. It would show the other one, but it won't show this one.
Oh no. Is the one running as a show? Have you started the slideshow?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So let me get back into the Zoom here. So I know you guys have it too. We might need to hop over to that as a backup. It's not ultimate, but for whatever reason, it's just not there. I see it on my screen, but when I open the share window, it's not one of the options.
You said you have 2 PowerPoints?
Well, I closed the other one.
Okay, let's try closing that one, the other one as well, the one that we're trying to get open.
Okay, share screen. Let me try one more time with the share screen. Oh wait, let me try show all windows. Oh, there it is. It was just pushed way down too far. My husband always says I have too many things open on my computer, so don't tell him this just happened. But now it's not letting me get, there we go. Okay, do you see it now?
Perfect. Yep, looks great. And we won't tell your
Perfect.
husband. Your secret's safe with us.
And if I do pause, is it back on me now?
We see both you and the screen. Looks great.
Oh, that's kind of interesting. Okay, awesome. Awesome. Okay. You know, we really did have everything all set up and ready to go. Don't you love technology? So let's talk for just a minute about why you are drawn to a class on real estate investing. And maybe you want to do a flip. Maybe you want to flip a house. Maybe you've been watching some of those TV shows and you see how much fun it can be to take a sledgehammer to a kitchen. And it is kind of fun, but that's not the best way to take down a kitchen. You do other damage too. How do I know? Shh, don't tell my husband. Maybe you want to hold rentals. Rentals are a big part of my personal investment strategy because I'm looking for that retirement income. I don't want to be out showing houses when I'm 80 years old. I want to be relaxing somewhere. So I've got rental properties. Maybe you want to work with investors. Maybe you want to take on a whole new niche of clientele. Maybe, and this is kind of a newer part of the real estate investing world, is maybe you want to buy houses specifically to do Airbnb with, which is a huge, huge niche right now and expected to continue to grow at crazy rates over the next year or two. Now, when we work with investors, there are some major benefits to it. However, there also are some challenges. And I'll just hit on a couple of the highlight ones, and maybe you've run into some of these before. Some of the benefits, investors are not emotionally attached. They really just look at the numbers. Do the numbers work? Yes or no? Move on to the next one. You're never going to have an investor say, oh, I can't take $200,000 for the house because little Johnny had his 3rd birthday party under the oak tree in the backyard. You're never going to have that with an investor. An investor just looks at numbers. Now, that means you've got to have a really good grasp on your numbers. You've got to understand return on investment, cash on cash return, all those different things, because that is what they care about. And they're going to ask you to help pre-screen that. The other thing with investors is a good investor has an avatar of the perfect property. They're going to tell you, if you find a 3-bedroom, 2-bath in this zip code under $200,000, I want to buy it. All you got to do is go find it. Now, the challenges to working with investors is a lot of times they are looking for a needle in a haystack. They're looking for a property that has a really good return on investment. Guess what? They're not the only person looking for that right now. So it can be very, very competitive. I went Sunday to preview a duplex for one of my customers. I'm in the Orlando area, and he had to work, so he couldn't go with me, but the showing, because it's tenant occupied, was from 1 to 3. Agents, bring your customers between 1 and 3. And I pulled up at 12:55, and there were already 15 cars and 20 people already standing in the front yard waiting for somebody to open the door. So that's one of the challenges with working with investors right now, is there's a ton of investment activity, especially in Florida. We've got all the hedge funds coming into town, which maybe you can work with some of the hedge funds. That might be a good little niche for you. So investors, they also sometimes need a little more extra work. Like they might ask you to even help with their rehabs. You know, oh, I got busy. Can you swing by and check on the plumber and that kind of stuff? And let's face it, investors want discounts on houses. They're not often making full price offers. They're trying to get a deal. So sometimes, especially in a hot market like that, that can be frustrating for you, but it can also be frustrating for them. So just a few little things to keep in mind. So where do you find investors? And the first place that I suggest you look is your past customer list, because you never know which one of your past customers might be your next investor buyer. When Tim and I bought our first house in our 20s, We barely could scrape together the money for our FHA down payment. And our agent never kept in touch with us because they probably didn't think we, hey, they barely could afford their first house. They're not going to do anything else. And within 3 years of buying that first house, we did our first investment, and we never looked back from there. So don't second guess who on your list might be your next investor. Talk to all of them about the possibilities. But there's some specific places too. You can go to meetup.com and find local investment meetups. You can go to your local real estate investment association. It's called a REIA, R-E-I-A. Just Google wherever you are. So I know most of you are in the Sarasota, Bradenton area. So just put Sarasota Real Estate Investment. And maybe you need to go to Tampa to find a club that you like, but it's a great place to meet other investors. How about showing up at auctions, showing up at the courthouse steps when they're doing foreclosure auctions? Although I think both Sarasota and Manatee are doing everything online now. Here in Seminole County, we still actually have the courthouse foreclosure auction. It's not on the front steps anymore. They've moved it inside to one of the courthouses, but it's actually there. But just start mingling and just start talking to people. Maybe the next time you reprint your business cards, add on their real estate investments and just see what comes out of it. Don't second guess anybody. That would be my number one secret. So I want you to think, if you've done an investment, if you've helped one of your customers buy an investment property, whether that was buying a flip or selling a flip or buying a rental property or selling a rental property, I want you to just stop and think for a second. How long did it take? From the time they bought the house to the time they sold it, how long did it take? From the time they bought it to the time they got a tenant in it, how long was it? Where did you find it for them? Was it an MLS transaction or did you find an off-market deal for them? How much did they make? How much did you make? Okay. So I think it was 2 years ago, one of my friends here in town who's a real estate agent called me up and he said, hey, are you interested in picking up a rental property in the 808 zip code? And I said, yeah, I'll look at anything if the numbers are right. So I ended up buying the property for $80,000. We did very minimal work to it. It really didn't need a whole ton. And I put a tenant in it. We then refinanced it to get our money back out. And right now I'm making, I think on that one, about $725 a month. $725 a month. I have nothing into it because remember I told you we refinanced it. So 725 times 12, $8,700 a year is what I'm making on that property. How much did he make in commission once? I make that $8,700 every single year. We're actually getting ready. I think I might be selling that one because it's worth about $180 now, just about 2 years later. So that one I'm thinking, I have a few of mine that might be on the chopping block right now, and that's one of them. But just think about how many times, there's an old saying, are you tripping over the dollars to get to the dimes? How would it have changed his family's life if they had just closed on that and turned it into a rental? They'd now be bringing that $8,700 a month, or sorry, a year into their household. So think about the next time you've got a nice little sweet deal come under your nose, maybe don't pass it on. Maybe it's time to do it yourself. Just a thought. This is just a quick picture. This is actually the first wholesale deal I ever did. It's here in Orlando in the Lake Eola Heights Historic District, which is downtown Orlando. I actually went back and I went back and Googled this the other day to look. When I sold it in 1999, I sold it for $116,000 as is. I didn't fix it. I did what's called a wholesale deal, which means I just sold it to another investor. When all the dust settled, I only made about $1,200 on this. But listen, this was back, I was in my 20s, so $1,200 was a ton of money to me. I was so happy. But nowadays, this house is worth about $500,000. So instead of that $1,200, what if I had figured out a way to financially keep it? And I'd be selling it now for like $500,000. Think about that. That's one of my big regrets, is all the stuff I've sold over the years. I really wish I had kept more. What we try to do now is like flip one, keep one, or flip two, keep one. We really do try to keep more of them. So let's talk, and you should all have a handout that was sent to you. And we're going to work together on filling these in. And this is why I say real estate is the ideal investment. And ideal is an acronym, IDEAL. So the I stands for income. In fact, let me pause sharing here for a second. So the I stands for income. In real estate, there are two different ways we can get income. We can either sell the property like a flip or a wholesale, and we'll talk about those in a second. We can either sell the property and put a chunk of change in our bank today fairly quickly, or we can put a tenant in it and collect a little bit of money every month for the rest of our lives. Okay, two different ways. Fast, you know, the fast, quick, hey, I just put 10 grand in the bank, or I'm making $8,700 a year for the rest of my life. Now, there's pros and cons to both of those. Flip income is considered short-term capital gains, and you are taxed at your highest tax bracket that you are in. In fact, a flip might bump you into a new tax bracket this year. So you're paying the absolute highest tax rate when you flip a property. Just something to think about. If you hold it as a rental, you're only paying income tax on what you collected. And later when you sell it, at least under current tax codes, you would sell it and you would only pay taxes on what's called long-term capital gains, which is for now a lower tax rate. Or you could do a 1031 tax exchange like we just did on one of our houses and not pay any taxes at all. What you're doing is you're kicking the can down the road. You're gonna pay taxes on it eventually, but it's gonna be later. Or I die and my heirs inherit it and then it's their problem. So 1031 exchange is an awesome tool. I am sure your board probably puts on classes about 1031 exchange. I would strongly recommend getting into the next one that they do, because that is a great tool. And if you understand them, it's a great way for you to pick up and work with more high caliber investors, okay? The D in ideal stands for depreciation. Now, I love depreciation because we get to tell the IRS that we lost money on our properties, even though we didn't. So it's what's called a paper loss. So let's say, for example, you are a business owner. We all understand that. Let's say that you buy a fancy new computer, scanner, printer setup, and you take $5,000 out of your cash pile and you put it into your equipment pile. Is your company now worth less money? No, all we did was move 5,000 from one pile to the other pile. But next year, is my fancy computer still worth $5,000? No, now it's a used computer, it's worth less. So we get to tell the IRS that our assets in our business, in this case, our computer, lost income. So our company is now worth less. So let's say, for example, a $5,000 computer, you write it off $1,000 a year. At the end, so you tell the IRS you lost $1,000 a year. At the end of 5 years, your computer on the books is worth zero. It's called fully depreciated. Okay, I can't take any more depreciation. I'm done. I already fully depreciated. Now, let's say I want to buy a new computer in 5 years, and I put the old one on Craigslist and I sell it for $500. I now have to report $500 income to the IRS because I told the IRS it was worth zero, but then I actually sold it for $500. That's called depreciation recapture. So I owe taxes on that $500 that I sold it for. Now, on real estate, we get to do the same thing. It's a little different. Now, is our real estate going down in value like the computer did? Hopefully not. Ignore those couple weird years that we had about, 12, 13 years ago. Ignore all that. In normal times, real estate goes up in value. Now, real estate's a little different. we're not allowed to depreciate the land that it sits on. We're only allowed to depreciate the improvements sitting on top of it. So typically like the house, the fence, the barn, whatever you have. And we don't get to do it over 5 years. That would be really awesome. We get to take it over 27.5 years. So you basically take out the lot value, and that's you and your accountant need to decide on that number. There is no tried and true rule. But you subtract the lot value and you take the improvement value divided by 27.5 years, and that's how much you get to take every year in depreciation. Okay. The E stands for equity. And equity is the difference between what you owe in a mortgage and what the property is worth. I think pretty much everybody knows that concept. But so equity, you've got, here's my mortgage, here's the value of the property. Every year, the tenant is going to be paying my mortgage down, and the value of the property hopefully is going up. So my equity is going to keep growing. With a normal transaction, your starting equity is however much you put down payment. So if I have a $100,000 house and I put $20,000 down, $80,000 mortgage, I have $20,000 equity. And then it grows from there. But investors often, because they're willing to take on problem properties, properties that need rehab, maybe properties that have code violations they have to fix, we're not paying full retail for something. So if I'm paying $100,000 for a house, it's probably worth at least $120,000 or maybe even more. So now I've got that gap. So $80,000 mortgage, but it's worth $120,000. I start with $40,000 equity and it grows from there. See the difference? So equity is awesome. The A is appreciation. And appreciation is how much the property goes up in value during the time we own it. Now, historically, you can go back like 40 or 50 years, and historically, our properties in Florida go up about 3% per year. We had a few years where it did this. Right now, we have some years where it's doing this. It's going crazy right now with appreciation. But if you go back and smooth out that line over like the last 40 or 50 years, it's about a 3% increase in appreciation. So if I buy a house for $100,000, next year it's worth $103,000. The year after that, it's not worth $106,000 because it's 3% more than $103,000. So it's actually $106,000 and some change. So it keeps growing exponentially. Does that make sense? But hold on, time out. Go back to depreciation for a second. The IRS doesn't care what the house is worth when they calculate out depreciation. They only care what you paid for it. So if I paid $100,000 for it, I can only calculate depreciation on $100,000, even if it's worth $1 million. It doesn't matter. I only paid $100,000. I only get to calculate depreciation on my $100,000. But appreciation doesn't care what you paid for it. It just cares what the market value is. So if I paid $100,000, but it's worth $200,000, next year it's going to go from $200,000 to $206,000, that 3% appreciation. Historically, I'm not giving exact figures. I did not stay at a Holiday Inn last night. So appreciation is based on the market value, not what you paid for it. So if you made a good deal, you're going to get awesome appreciation. So keep that in mind. So income, depreciation, equity, appreciation. Those four things alone are an amazing reason for people to invest in real estate. And I really want you to see that real estate is one of the last super powerful investment strategies that the average person really has. But when you add the L to it, it kind of makes it an absolute no-brainer. And the L is leverage. What the leverage means is we can do all of this with what we like to call OPM, other people's money. So if I'm buying this $100,000 house, how much money do I need? Do I need $100,000? No, because there's banks and hard money lenders that'll loan to me. Maybe I need 10% down, maybe I need 20% down, maybe I need 30% down, whatever, but I don't need the whole 100. I only need a part of it. Or could I bring in a partner? If I find a deal that's good enough, could I bring in a money partner? And maybe I don't have to have any money at all into the deal. I found the good deal, you bring the money, and we'll just split it at the end. Or maybe I can use what's called a private investor. So that house I bought 2 years ago, I bought it for 80 and it needed about 10,000 worth of work. I actually borrowed $90,000 from somebody on that. So I was able to buy the property and do all the repairs. And then once it was all fixed up and pretty, we waited 6 months, did a refinance and got our money back out and paid off our lender. Now we did make him payments during that time, but it's fine. We had the property rented. So the L is what kind of makes it a no-brainer. And we're going to talk a lot today about the leverage. I'm going to show you some examples of how using leverage actually is going to increase your return on investment. I have a friend who's an investor, and every time I post anything about property or investing or this or that, he always comments, "That's why I just pay cash for everything." I'm going to show you today that paying cash for everything is not the best use of your money. So we're going to talk about that today. Now, there are 3 main ways to invest in real estate. The first is what we call rehab and retail. That is where you buy an ugly house, you go in and do all the work, you make it pretty, and you put it back on the market and sell it. You are fix and flip. The second is what's called wholesale. So I find an ugly house that needs a whole lot of work, but instead of doing the work myself, I just tack a couple $1,000s onto it and I sell it to another investor. Now, the benefits, when I fix it and sell it, the benefits are I may make a big old chunk of money, but the cons are, or I could have completely misjudged my numbers and I end up losing money and holding the thing for a year and I hate it. And why did I get into the stupid deal? With wholesale, you don't make as much, but it's quick, you're done. I'm out in sometimes even less than a week. I call another investor, "Hey, I got this one. Are you interested?" "Yep, deal's done." I got my couple $1,000s and I move on. Then the investor is responsible for, "What do you mean we can't get windows for 6 months? What do you mean there's nobody that can install my flooring for me?" Which is a big problem right now, finding people to do the work. So that's called wholesaling, where you just mark it up a little and sell it to another investor. And then the third one is rentals. And long-term rentals and short-term rentals are completely different. Again, if you don't have experience in the short-term rental world and a customer tries to get help with that, be really, really cautious with any advice you give, because a lot of our cities and counties have restrictions on short-term rentals. I can't tell you how many listings I keep seeing that say this would make a great short-term. All of my short-term rentals are over in Daytona Beach. Daytona Beach is very strict. There's only one zoning code that allows it. And I think there's like 20 houses in that little pocket. But I see so many people saying would make a great Airbnb. And I'm like, except it's not in the zone. You're going to get in trouble if you try to do an Airbnb with that. So just be careful. Be careful with what you're advertising. Don't advertise that it can, even if it's currently an Airbnb, doesn't mean it can be. They could be doing it illegally. So be very aware of that. It's a big problem I'm seeing right now. So if you are going to flip a house, there are some numbers that you need to know. I'm a numbers person, and if you're going to be investing, you need to be a numbers person too, because it all boils down to the numbers. The first is what we call ARV. That is after repair value. That is not what it's worth right now. That's once I put in the new kitchen, the new roof, and the new electric panel. Once I make it all pretty, what's it gonna be worth when it's all done? And we take that number and then we subtract everything off of that to figure out where we need to be to buy the property. You need to know what your repair costs are going to be. And repair costs are going up right now. If you fix something, if you did a rehab a year or two ago and haven't done one since, double check your numbers because stuff has gone up. It is crazy. You need to know your holding costs. How much is this property going to cost me every month that I don't have it sold yet? So that's going to be your cost of money if you have a mortgage on it. That's going to be insurance. It's going to be property taxes, homeowners association, mowing the lawn, keeping the pool blue. All those different things are going into your cost. So if part of my rehab is I want to put in new windows and every window company is 6 months backed up, I know I'm going to hold this property for a minimum of 6 months because that has to be done before I can get it sold. And your holding costs can eat up your profit real fast if you're not careful. You need to know your purchase costs. You're going to have closing costs when you buy, title insurance, surveys. You're going to do homeowners insurance, prorations, all those different things are going to be cost for you. So you need to know what it's going to cost you to get in. You need to know what it's going to cost you to get out. Okay. Does your office take a percentage if you list your own properties? Are you in a market where you're going to have to pay closing cost concessions? Are you going to have to pay repair cost concessions? All these different things that you need to kind of think about. And then hopefully after we figure out all those things, there's a little bit of profit left over for us. Now you've got to decide up front what your profit is going to be. What are you willing to do this deal for? And I have a general rule. I want to make at least as much as my repairs are. This is just my rule. Everybody's going to have a different rule. That's fine. I see investors right now going into deals way too skinny. Like they're going into deals right up front that they think they're only going to make 5,000 or 10,000 on. The problem is that's 5,000 or 10,000 if nothing goes wrong. You have one thing go wrong and that 5 or 10 can disappear quickly. We're in hurricane season. What if a hurricane comes through and damages your roof and it takes you 6 months to get it fixed? 6 months more of holding costs could eat up your profits. What if you find out the septic tank is bad and you need a new drain field? That could eat up your profits. So I don't do deals that are that skinny. And the more risk I'm putting in, like I would never buy a $500,000 house that needs $100,000 worth of repairs and hope to make $20,000. That's just not enough. But I might buy a $100,000 house that needs $10,000 in repairs to hope to make $20,000. See the difference? The more risk you're taking on, the more financial outlay, the bigger your reward should be. So just keep that in mind as you're looking at numbers. So wholesaling, how do you wholesale? There's a couple different ways you can do it. You can get a property under contract with what's called an assignable contract. And you guys know we've got those 3 little boxes on the far bar: is assignable, is not assignable, or is with release, the 3 things. If a contract is assignable, I can get it under contract for $100 and you pay me $3,000 and boom, here, the contract is now yours. You get to show up next week to closing instead of me. The other way you can do it is you can do a double close. So I can go ahead and close on it at $100,000 and then turn around an hour later at the same title company and sell it to you for $105,000. Just remember, now you're having double sets of closing costs. So I'm going to have closing costs when I buy on the first part, but I'm also going to have closing costs when I sell on the second part. Does that make sense? So keep in mind how to do that. But generally, those are the 2 ways. You either do a double closing at the title company or you do an assignment of contract. Those are the 2 main ways that are wholesale. There's a couple other advanced ways too, but those are what 99% of the deals are going to be done that way. Rentals. I don't know if you've ever owned rental properties or if you own any right now. I will tell you, long-term rentals have a little bit of a challenge facing them right this second. We have an issue with people not paying their rent right now. Now, some of them are true hardships and others are, I actually got this text from one of my tenants last year. They said on TV that we don't have to pay our rent anymore. Is that right? And I very quickly texted back. I was like, absolutely, that is not correct. But this is what we're facing right now. We had one last year who didn't pay. It took me a year to get her out because of the eviction ban and all that stuff. We were eventually able to get her out, but we lost about $15,000 on that one. If you only owned one rental property and they didn't pay you for a year, how would that affect you financially? Now, we owned 8 others that all were paying, so we were able to absorb that. So these are things you got to think about too when you're talking to customers, is could they financially take on a hit? So not only did I have one not pay me last year, but we had another one that needed a new septic tank and a few other things. And we ended up spending a little over $10,000 on that one. So to a lot of people, that could have been a huge financial, no, trust me, I didn't like it. It definitely affected our budget, but it didn't send us to bankruptcy court because we have it structured where we have the other ones. Everybody kind of, they pay their own way, but they also help pay everybody else's way if we have an issue. Short-term rentals, completely a different world. Short-term rentals don't fall under the eviction ban. They pay you upfront for the time you're there. In most jurisdictions, it falls under hotel law. So if they don't pay, it's really easy to get them out. Some of the differences, it's more like a job. If you're self-managing, I self-manage all my properties, my longs and my shorts. My long-term rentals, self-managing involves making sure I deposit the checks once a month. Actually, nowadays, most of them just Zelle me, so I don't even need to do that. I just have a spreadsheet of make sure I got everybody's Zelle. The short-term rentals are completely different. Like I have a new one coming online. Today is our first guest in a new one. So as soon as we're off, I'm driving over to Daytona to make sure the cleaners have everything right for our first guest to stay in the new unit. I'm constantly, I get messages. Now I love the messages because they say like, bing, Joe would like to book your studio for 3 days. You will make $600 if you approve his request. I love that. But then you also get at 11 o'clock at night, my key won't work. So you've got to handle that. I'm getting where that's all more self. After my husband had to drive to Daytona the other day to bring a key to somebody, we now have a hidden key somewhere, but that's to the building, not to our unit. It's all over the place. But short-term rentals are more of a job. You definitely need to be people friendly if you're going to do short-term rentals, because there is a lot of communication and a lot of hand-holding in short-term rentals. So just kind of a different, I'm not saying good, bad, ugly. I actually love mine and we keep buying more. So just realize that it takes a different mentality to manage a short-term rental than a long-term rental. It's really not a rental, it's a business and it's hospitality. It's completely all about people. Now, let's talk about the power of leverage. I alluded before that we were going to talk about this a little deeper, and pull out your little sheets again, your little handout, and we're going to fill in some numbers down here in these examples right now. Now, for all of my samples, we are using a $100,000 house. We are using $200 a month for taxes and insurance, and we are using $1,200 a month for gross rent. So if we are using $1,200 a month for gross rent, minus $200 for taxes and insurance, that means we're netting $1,000 a month rent. Okay, everybody with me there? Why does it do that when I click over? Silly. Okay. So we are using the same numbers in all our assumptions. Now, sample one, you pay cash for the house. Your gross profit is $1,000 a month or $12,000 a year. What I like to use when I'm looking at a property is what's called cash on cash return. Cash on cash return, you take your annual return. So in this case, it is the $12,000 that we're going to make divided by how much cash did we need to buy the property. So in this case, I added $5,000 closing cost on. Well, I used $5,000 on all the examples just so it's kind of apples to apples. So $12,000 is what we got back. $105 is what we had to put out. That is a return of 11.43. Okay. So on the cash you put out, you are getting 11.43%. And that is 8.75 years to get your money back. That's one thing I like to look at. If I'm putting out $100,000, how long is it going to take me to get it back? So all I did for that is I took 100% divided by 11.43, and that gives me 8.75 years to get my money back. Okay. Is 11.43 a good return? Absolutely. How much is your bank paying you on your savings account? Like 0.000143. So it is an awesome return. If somebody just had $100,000 paid cash for a house, rented it out, they're going to make 11.43. Now notice I said this is a very simple example. Yes, there might be an air conditioner that breaks. There might be some repairs. There might be vacancy. I'm just showing you, all this is a simple example to show you the difference between paying cash and using mortgage leverage. Okay, so there's other things involved, but not for this purpose for today's example. Now, depreciation. Let's say that we figure our lot is worth $20,000. So we take our $100,000 house minus 20 gives you $80,000. 80,000 divided by 27.5 years, we get to tell the IRS we lost $2,900 this year on this house. So we're not paying taxes on 12,000, we're only paying taxes on about 9,000. Pretty cool. Okay. Sample 2. What if you put down 50% on 2 houses instead of paid cash for 1? So 50,000. You now have a mortgage payment on both of these properties. So after your mortgage payment, you're only making $700 a month. When we paid cash, we were making $1,000 a month. Now we're making $700. But we have 2 of them. So we're not making $700, we're making $1,400. So we're making more than we were in the first example. So now we're making $16,800 per year on our 2 properties, divided by 110, because I put 50 down on 2, but I had 2 sets of $5,000 closing costs. So our return on investment just went up to 15.27. So we went up 4 percentage points on return, but just by using leverage. Is that a good thing? Yeah. The other way we were making 12,000, now we're making almost 17 with the same initial investment. And we now have 2 depreciations. So 5,800 in depreciation, we're only paying taxes on 11,000, not the whole almost 17,000. Make sense? Sample 3, what if we put 20% down on 5 houses? Okay. By the way, these are all just example numbers. These aren't real interest rates or anything like that. We're just trying to figure out a rough example for you. So now, because I'm taking on bigger mortgages, I have bigger payments. So now my net profit goes down to only $520 a month. Okay. So we keep going down on how much we make, but we now have 5 of them. So now we're making $31,200 on the same original $100,000. Now we need a little bit more for our closing costs now, but 31.2 divided by 125, our return on investment just went up to basically 25%. Okay, so we went from 11 to 15 to 25% just by using the power of leverage. Isn't that pretty awesome? 25% cash on cash return means I will get all my money back in 4 years. That's what I shoot for in my investments, just so you know. That is our target, is to get our money back in 4 years. I have some that are a little less. I have some that frankly are more than that, but this is our target, is to get our money back in 4 years. Now we have 5 depreciations. So depreciation is almost 15,000. So we're only paying taxes on about $16,000. So we're making way more, but our tax liability didn't go up very much for making that much more money. I love it. I love it. Is anybody's little wheels turning in there going, oh, this is kind of awesome. Now, sometimes investor money costs you more. Hard money costs more. And everybody always says, yeah, but we don't get the good rates. So I'm giving you an example at 10% interest. It's ridiculous. Nobody would pay 10%, right? Well, maybe you will. So now your payment is way higher. I understand that. So your profit goes down to only about $300 each property. But your annual return, you're still a 14.3 return on investment. to buy 5 houses at 10% interest? Who would pay 10% interest? Well, I would if it gets me 14% return on my money. So think about that. And you still have the depreciation. So now I'm only paying taxes on about $3,000. Not bad, huh? Interesting. Anybody's brain kind of going in overdrive here? Now, let me ask you a question. Which is better for your customer, for the investor? Is it better for them to have 1 house or 5 houses? So we've just shown that their return on investment is better to have 5. But now they have 5 incomes coming in. So if 1 doesn't pay, the other 4 still are, and it helps cover it. Or if 1 has major repairs, the other 4 still cover it. We're taking 5 depreciations. We have 5 houses building equity. So in 30 years, when I make my last mortgage payment, I now have 5 free and clear houses in retirement instead of just 1. I have 5 appreciating. So if I hold on to these for 5 years and they all go up $50,000, if I only had 1, I sell it and I make $50,000. But if I have 5 and they each go up $50,000 and I sell all 5, now I have $250,000. But it's all with the same initial investment. Which one's better for you? Do you want 1 closing commission or do you want 5 closing commissions? So it's a win-win for everybody. So the next time you have somebody call, and I'm sure some of you have gotten this phone call in the past, I got $100,000. Will you go find me a house I can pay cash for? I want you to say, yep. And let me talk to you about some other options. And sit down and just pull out a yellow pad of paper and write IDEAL down the side of it and go over each of these and show them why 2 is better than 1 and why 5 is better than 2. Okay, very, very powerful numbers here. Now, let's talk about some things that are going on in the finance world, because as you know, there are lots of changes going on in the finance world. For investors, they're actually for the better. While you may not think so, they absolutely are. So Fannie and Freddie have gone through, that's conventional loans. Fannie and Freddie have gone through a time where they loved investors and then they hated investors. They love us again. So it's a very good time. They can use either current leases or a rent schedule on the appraisal, whichever's lower. So if you're buying a property that already has tenants, you can use the income from it right away. If you're using a property that doesn't have tenants yet, they're going to use whatever the rent roll is on your appraisal. Now, you do have to have reserves, and it totally depends on a lot of features, how much you need in reserve. So I'm not going to go that detailed for you today. There are programs that can use bank statements as full documentation. The money is going into your bank somehow, so therefore you must be earning it. The one that's my favorite right now, and I really want you to sit down and talk to your mortgage broker. This is something that's more broker oriented because they need access to a lot of different programs. If your mortgage broker doesn't know what you're talking about, you need a different mortgage broker for your investment stuff. And I'm a firm believer, even though my husband is a mortgage broker, he is not the be all end all. He does not do down payment assistance or bond money. He just doesn't. He doesn't do commercial. So even though I'm married to a lender, I still also have other lenders that have different niche products that I send to when I need to. Does that make sense? So you don't want just one, trust me, you want more than one. The new one that's out, and this has been around forever in commercial loans, and it's just now coming over into residential, and that's called a debt service coverage ratio, DSCR loan. Maybe you've heard of it, you didn't know what it was. Basically, if the rental on the property covers the mortgage payment, they'll do the loan. Now, it could be different ratios, like if your payment's $1,000, they don't want it to be renting for $1,000, but you probably shouldn't buy it if that's all it rents for anyway. So maybe if the payment is $1,000, maybe they want it to rent for at least $1,250. But as long as your rent roll shows it's going to rent for at least $1,250, they figure that property can self-support itself, And they don't look at your other stuff like your tax returns and your pay stubs and all that. It's based just on the property itself's performance. So what passed with TRID and non-QM lending and all that stuff after the last crash is basically the government came out and said, you can't do a loan that can't support itself. You need to verify that this person can really afford this house. So we do not have stated income loans and all that gobbledygook anymore. But what we do have is debt service coverage ratios that says, well, the property can support itself. So therefore the buyer can afford it. That is considered income verification because the property has its own income. So debt service coverage ratio loans are awesome. Now, another thing that might be a tool if you have investors who have multiple properties is what's called a blanket loan. So Fannie Mae is going to cap you, even if you're a well-qualified buyer, they're going to cap you at 10 mortgaged properties, 10 mortgages. There is no number 11, no matter how strong of a borrower you are. So an investor, let's say they've hit 10, they can take maybe 5 of those and go to a commercial lender and get what's called a blanket loan on it. So they put 5 houses under one loan. Now on paper, they only have 6 mortgages and they can go back and get 4 more from Fannie Mae. So just a thought, there is some risk involved there is I now have 5 houses tied up under one loan. You want to make sure it has some way to release the lien on one of them if you needed to sell one for some reason. Fix and flip properties, there's all types of different, there's credit lines that you can get for your business to do fix and flip. There's private money, there's hard money. There's different, I know a lot of investors are right now building spec homes and flipping spec homes. There's also specific financing just for that. What you need to do is figure out which niches you have customers going after and go find the lender that has those products. Fair enough? Okay, just checking my time. We are doing good. How about overpaying for a property? I have so many people say, well, I don't want to work with investors because they want to buy everything at half price. And that's not always true. This is a little house that I bought about 3 years ago. It actually ended up appraising low. And I want to say maybe 4,000 or 5,000 low. I don't remember the exact numbers, but the return was good enough that we went ahead and paid the difference and bought it anyway. Now, this was in commercial. This area had been changed to commercial zoning, but it was grandfathered in as residential. The problem with that is you can't get Fannie, VA, or FHA loans on that unless the county will give you a rebuild letter. Whole different, that's an hour talk all by itself. This property, you could not get a rebuild letter from the city, so it couldn't get any type of conventional financing. We got a portfolio loan from one of our local banks. They only did it on a 20-year. We ended up having to put down 30% instead of 20, and it appraised low, so we had to pay the difference, and it was still a good deal. And I make about $800 a month on this property. Okay, we paid, I want to say like 72 for it, maybe. No, we paid 76, it appraised for 72, I think. So we didn't pay much, and I'm making almost $10,000 a year. So was I worried about overpaying by 4,000 when I'm going to be making way more than 4,000 in the first year? So investors, long-term and short-term rental investors, they're not necessarily looking to buy something for 50 cents on the dollar. The flip investors are. So when we talk about working with investors, that's 2 different niches you can go after. Another quick case study. Everybody always likes seeing the before and afters. So I like to share a couple. Wasn't that kitchen gorgeous? But here's the real Deltona case study. I just sold that one a few months ago, and I did a 1031 exchange into 4 more Daytona Beach condos. The Deltona house was making us about $500 a month when we sold it because the taxes and insurance had gone up so much. We were only making about $500. Turning them into these 4 condos are going to make us a minimum of about 4,000 a month. So I just turned 500 a month income into 4,000 a month income just by moving some money around. And the 1031 exchange made it where I didn't pay taxes on the profit from the property, from the sale of it. So just some things to think about. When is wholesaling a good choice? When is retailing a good choice? When is renting a good choice? I like looking at every property as a potential rental as my first step, because I'm looking to build my long-term income. So I look at everything first as, would this be a good rental? And then if the answer to that is no, then I look, okay, would it be a good deal to flip, to wholesale, to fix up and sell retail? And if the answer to those is no, then I move on. But wholesaling, typically, I will wholesale if it's maybe far away and I don't have time to oversee the repairs. I will wholesale if I'm too busy and really don't have time. Like if I already have a couple properties going, I may not have time to take on another one. Or I might wholesale if it needs a certain type of work that I don't feel qualified to do. I don't mean me do, but oversee. Like I personally don't work with fires and I don't work with sinkholes, but I know other investors who love sinkholes and fires, so I might just wholesale it to them. So just some things to think about. Let me kind of stop the sharing here so we can hop back on moi, and let me see how we're doing in chat. So basically we are at 11 o'clock and we've got about 10 more minutes, and this is Q&A time for you. So I have a client who has a rental condo with a long-term lease. The association has adjusted the bylaws for rentals allowed in the community down to only 25% rentals and no new leases until they achieve that. If he would sell it, his current lease would be invalid. Hold on, I'm trying to scroll. And his tenant would have to leave. He's decided not to sell it this time. I don't think that's true. If there is a current lease in place, that's got to be honored if you sell the property. Now, did they already change the bylaws or they're trying? They have adjusted the bylaws. Okay. So when somebody sells a property, the lease does not get extinguished. The lease goes with the property, unless there was something weird in the lease, but typically the leases go with the property. And this has been a big problem that I've seen with listings. If you're selling a property that's tenant occupied and there's still time left on their lease, and you're trying to sell the property to an owner occupant, that may not work, because the owner occupant, depending on the financing they're getting, they have to take occupancy within usually 30 to 60 days. So if there's 6 months left on a lease, an owner occupant can't buy it. So you're going to have to sell to an investor. And maybe you should talk to the tenant about early moving out. Hey, listen, you're going to be moving out at the end of the lease anyway. If you want to start looking for a place right now, we'll help you. We'll pay for a moving truck, whatever it is. It could make you way more money in the long run to spend a little money to help get that tenant out early. But I would check with your attorney, because the lease should go with the property. So the tenant's lease would not be invalidated. If the best thing for your seller to do is to sell that property, I would go ahead and do it. Is wholesaling really legit for us as realtors? Yes, wholesaling is absolutely legit. Now, you need to be careful you're doing it right, because there's things you can do that aren't right, but you actually have a benefit that you know how it's supposed to be. You know what's right and wrong. So wholesaling is all I'm doing when I go to Walmart and I buy a screwdriver for $20. There were things that happened to get to that screwdriver being on the Walmart shelf at $20. So ABC wholesalers sold it to Walmart maybe for $10, and Walmart marks up the price to $20. ABC wholesalers bought it from some company in China for $5. So they made $5 when they sold it to Walmart. They made less on it, but they sold Walmart 100,000 of them at a time. Walmart's going to make more on it, but Walmart has to pay for the electricity for the store. They have to pay for the employees to check it out. Walmart has to wait. They're only getting $10 at a time every time they sell one. So the wholesaler sold 100,000 all at once, but they made less money. The retailer, which is Walmart, makes more money, but they took on more of the risk. What if somebody steals that screwdriver? What if that screwdriver gets broken and they have to throw it away and mark it out of inventory? So retailers take on more of the risk, but wholesaling, absolutely, it is legit. Now, there's a lot of things that some of these investors are doing. And you heard in my intro, I ran the local real estate investment clubs for years. A lot of investors are doing stuff wrong. Like those signs you see on the side of the road that say, we'll pay you $1,000 bird dog fee if you find us a property. Yeah, that's a commission. And they will sit there and argue with you all day long that it's not a commission. That's a commission. You are offering a commission or a referral fee to find a property. There's nothing wrong with wholesaling if it's done properly. And because you have a license, you need to make sure you're doing everything properly. Don't put out signs that say, I'll give you $1,000 if you bring a property to me. Make sure you're disclosing that you're an agent on all of your stuff. But other than that, you absolutely can do it. Were you able to access the federal funds available for landlords and tenants? The answer to that is in some cases, yes, and in some, no. The problem with all of those programs is the landlord cannot apply for them. Only the tenant can apply for them. So the one that I finally was able to get evicted, she just didn't try. She didn't answer the phone. She didn't do anything. She never made any attempt until we were standing at her door with the sheriff, and it was a little late then. Some of my other ones, I did get like a $12,000 check on one of my other properties earlier this year. Right now, I actually have 3 of my properties that have hit, for different reasons than COVID, have hit financial hardships. It just happened to happen all at once. And they're going through the process right now. It's a slow process, and it's a government entity. Let's just say it's not very efficiently run. Is that a fair way of putting it? I love this info. I'm going to go back and watch this again. Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And one of the things that we had talked about when we planned this little short session is if it's a topic that you guys are really interested in, we can schedule the actual full CE class and I can come down to Sarasota and we can do it live. So just let me know. By the way, Sarasota sailors, do you consider paying off mortgages earlier to save interest, or does it not really matter for your situation? So this is something that everybody has to sit down and look at their own situation. And this is something I do with our customers a lot too, especially my investors. I'll sit them down with me and my husband because he's got the mortgage side of it, and we'll kind of just analyze what they've got. I did look a couple years ago at putting all of our properties on an accelerated pay down, where basically you take all the profits from all of them and start chunking down one mortgage. And then when that one's gone, you take all the profits and start chunking down the next mortgage. But what we looked at, and I'm totally transparent when I teach classes. I'll tell you that where we messed up, and I'll tell you where we think we're geniuses. We looked, and I could have had all of our properties free and clear in about 5 years. And at the end of that, I would have had, at that time when I did the math, I would have had 5 free and clear properties. But instead of paying that extra towards existing mortgages, what we decided to do was put that extra into an account, and that account kept building up and building up. And anytime the account got to a certain number, go buy another house. When the account gets to that another number, go buy another house. Now, the cool thing is the more houses you have paying into that account, the faster you get to that level where you have enough money to buy another house. So back then, when we did this math a couple years ago, it took us about 2 years to get enough money to go buy another house. But right now, other than the fact that I have 3 not paying right now, let's forget that part. If everybody was paying like they're supposed to, I have enough money to go buy another house about every 8 months. And when I buy another house, then I'll have enough money to do it every 6 months. So I don't put any money into any of my investments anymore. They are completely self-sufficient. They pay their own repairs. They pay their own everything. None of our work job money goes into our investments at all. They're 100% self-supportive at this point, and they're making money, and they keep buying themselves new friends. Let's put it that way. So we have added 5 short-term rentals this year to our portfolio with none of our own cash. And we're actually closing on another one. The seller was overseas. We're literally he's already signed the documents. We're just waiting for him to show up at the title company, and then we're closing on one more. And again, none of our own money. All of our properties keep buying their own friends. That was just a comment. In a condo that has a rule of 2 years ownership before you can rent, you can't rent it. Yeah, listen, condos are a whole different beast. They've got rules, and they can change the rules on you. So before you buy an investment property in a condo, you really need to research those condos and their attitudes. What do you think of dipping your toe into investment properties by renting to an older family member, like a mother-in-law thinking of relocating from Texas? Is it asking for more trouble than it's worth? General rule, I'm not real big on renting to family. I'm not real big on doing business with family. But that's a decision you've got to make. If mom doesn't pay the rent this month, are you going to chase her? Are you going to evict her? So if it's truly a business investment, then it's probably not the best choice. However, you've got to look. If you're putting your entire life savings into this investment for her to live in, that might be a mistake, because if something happens and she can't pay you, now you're financially strapped too. If you've got $83 million in the bank and you're going to buy a $100,000 condo for mom, that's a completely different story. Do you manage all of your properties yourself? As of right now, I absolutely do manage all of my properties myself. I always say ain't nothing a problem till the day it's a problem. So as of right now, everything's going smoothly, other than like the eviction last year. Let's see. I'm being told we got time for one more question. Do you know much about using 401k money for investments? So yes, what you need to look into is what's called a self-directed IRA. Self-directed IRA. There's a couple of different companies that do them. We're lucky we've got one right here in the Orlando area. So basically a self-directed IRA, you can use your own IRA money to invest in properties, notes, but you've got to be super careful. There are really strict rules. You can't mix your own, like if the house needs a new air conditioner, the IRA needs to pay for the new air conditioner. You can't pay for it out of your own pocket. So you've got to be really careful with following the rules, or the IRS throws it all out and deems the whole thing as taxable. So if you're going to mess with that, you need to get some training. Which one in Orlando? It is called New View, NUVIEW. They also do CE classes and stuff as well on self-directed. So maybe you could even bring them down to the board sometime. They would love to come down. The owner, Glenn, is an awesome guy, and they are super smart. So self-directed IRAs, and also you need to learn more about 1031 exchanges. Having just gone through a 1031 exchange for ourselves personally, I was pulling my hair out. It was so stressful. So I definitely feel more prepared to help a customer through that next time, because it was crazy. It was crazy. So we are at 11:10. Actually, we're at 11:11. Shh, don't tell anybody I went over. Shh, 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 shh. Although Cassidy probably already knows we went over. Cassidy, are you there? Pop back in.
I am, and we are all set. So thank you so much, Andy, for being here today. We really appreciate you doing this session for us.
And I'm super easy to find. If you've got questions, I'm all over Facebook. Just go look for Andy Werger Tolbert. I'm not hard to find.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much. I'll go ahead and end the session now.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.